Hello everyone and welcome back to another album review, and in this video I'm going to review Peace Sour Girlfriend by the Gerogerigegege. I know I'm kind of late for this, but I actually listened to this album for the first time a few days back, and this was an album that was in my radar for quite some time since I saw the trailer of this album from the label itself, and I was definitely looking forward to listen to this. But as the time would pass by, I just sort of forgot about this release. But yeah, basically this is not a brand new release. What we have with Peace Our Girlfriend is an archival from the massive and very varied catalog of the Gerogerigegege. Now, if you don't know already, I think that the Gerogerigegege is one of the weirdest bands that exist out there. The genius behind the mind of Juntaro Yamanouchi is something that you don't usually see in like any genre, from like the way he would just troll people with the multiple releases he would have, even from like back in the 80s and 90s, with stuff that just feels so ahead of their time. And getting into an album of the Gerogerigegege, you pretty much never know what to expect. Always expect the unexpected with the works of Juntaro. Take the previous release, for example, Ugo Sudani Apocalypse, which is basically stuff that I'm not even sure if it's about original material or if it's just stolen stuff, but we basically have a collection of tracks that go into just lounge and easy listening. Now, this release over here is the first press on picture disc by the Gerogerigegege, and it's done by the label F.O.A.D Records, which is actually an Italian thrash and hardcore label. Weird choice, but whatever. Now, just by the trailer, I knew that we were going to get into the harsh noise territory of Juntaro's works, which goes actually like really back in the late 80s and early 90s, since this was the period where we actually got some pure results of just extreme and brutal harsh noise. This is basically a sound that, similar to this, they haven't actually touched upon for decades, and this actually ends up being a quite brutal and a really harsh work of noise and experimental music. This album goes before the noisecore stuff like with Tokyo Anal Dynamite or with Yellow Trash Bazooka. Instead, if you like albums like Century Champion or Century Power Up, this is the closest example you can get with Peace Our Girlfriend. This is just pure harsh noise that can also give you the impression that you're listening from like some of the first works from Asona. It has this kind of aesthetic to it. And yeah, this archival work is actually made back in this period, like late 80s, early 90s, but we're still unsure since even Juntaro himself is unsure of it. Like, it's so weird how it's so hard to find pretty much any information about any of the albums from this band. Every single thing they would do is such a mystery, and this mysterious aura pretty much makes any release just being so unpredictable and even more bizarre than what they just intend to do with their music, because the only kind of information we have from this album is those few words from Juntaro himself, which say, "And I just found excellent unreleased tape of Gero at home. I can't remember this recording a date. Date may be the end of 80 or early 90. I think you and Gero fans really like this recording. Side A for 50 minutes, side B for 50 minutes. I named this record is Peace Our Girlfriend." This is basically all the information you need about this album. And like I said, in this very short album that goes for just about 30 minutes, I think we actually get the most brutal and the most menacing stuff we've ever heard from this group. Like, if you really count out some of the very just outright ridiculous, lo-fi and just absurd deliveries they would have with some of their noisecore releases, most of the sounds on this album just end up sounding quite disgusting. This album is just non-stop, pure, raw, free improvised and unsettling harsh noise, like harsh noise to the core. Now in this picture disc it is separated into lots of multiple tracks, but there are no like timestamps, and the only way you can find this available it's like only from someone who uploaded it on YouTube. Once again, it is so hard for anyone to find any way to listen to the Gerogerigegege music, so this is all we got, someone uploading it straight out of the vinyl version. And the thing with this album is that I cannot separate or distinct when we get from one song to the next, because it plays as a continuous theme throughout its whole runtime. And on the first side we have some of those signature moments with 1, 2, 3, 4 and some really brutal screams, but overall the first side of this album is just relentless, non-stop, brutal, disgusting, absolutely ruthless harsh noise. There are moments on this album, some of the frequencies, some of those high frequencies, they pierce your ear. They're just so disturbing. They're just so ear piercing. They're just so intense. How is this even allowed? How is this even legal? Like, if you're looking for an absolutely just ugly album, just look no further than this. Peace Sour Girlfriend is easily one of the most intense albums in harsh noise you can find in recent years, and I'm pretty glad that this is something that managed to get repressed after all of those years, that was just lost and hidden for a weird reason, because I think there are so many great elements to this album that make it one of the standouts in the early years of the Gerogerigegege, with those brutal industrial soundscapes, some really glitchy portions, extremely lo-fi, brutal and disgusting sounds, some of the vocal delivery, some of the screams, they're just so relentless and so mind-numbingly insane. Pretty much the entire first half is non-stop filth and anger. It doesn't give you a single break, it doesn't give you a moment to breathe, like at all. Now the second half, on the other hand, is toned down a bit. It focuses more on like sampling and sound collage elements with multiple distorted and manipulated spoken word sections, some weird instrumentals, and all of those portions are glitched and they're just filled with so many sounds that are either harsh noise or give you a sense of junk metal abuse. So yeah, the second half actually gives you some breaks, it gives you some moments to breathe, but it's still like really brutal, and in some occasions there are still some really high and just ear-piercing frequencies. The main thing with this album is that, in my opinion, even in its very short period of time, it actually gets one-dimensional really fast. I mean, if you pretty much grasp the idea of what the album is about, this is pretty much how the rest of the album is going to be like. It doesn't really develop that much into the idea it presents from the first minute, and this is kind of the main issue I ended up having with this album, is that there were moments that I felt that I wasn't like that much grasped into this whole aesthetic and the whole sound of this thing, because it felt like it wasn't really leading into anything different or that much more significant. There was not that much of a change or a development throughout this whole thing, and it ended up getting kind of boring at times, even in its short period of time. So on one hand, I can see why this album wasn't released much earlier, because getting into some of the other works Juntaro had at the time with Sensory Power Up and Sensory Champion, those were definitely some better works and a bit more diverse. On the other hand, yeah, Peace Our Girlfriend is far more just straightforward and just keeps up with a specific theme for basically the entire runtime. But I still find this work to be quite enjoyable, having lots of great moments to it and being another significant moment, adding the varied and bizarre catalog of anything Gerogerigegege have done so far. So for me, as far as it doesn't end up being one of my favorite work from them, but definitely the greatest thing about this album is its aesthetic. It is sickening, it is filthy, it is raw, it is just relentless. And overall, if you are unfamiliar with the works of the Gerogerigegege, this is definitely not a good starting point, especially if you're not that used into some extremely high ear-piercing frequencies, because they are quite occasional in this release. So overall, dig the sound of this thing. I think it's an interesting release. If it was a bit more diverse and don't just rely on some free improvised stuff here and there, I think we would actually have an even more cohesive result. But overall, this is a standout harsh noise release on its own. I'm going to give Peace Our Girlfriend a 7 out of 10. What's your opinion on this album? Like it? Dislike it? Why and what do you want me to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.